I found the messages on his phone at 2 a.m., his hand still resting beside my head while he slept, and one line stopped my heart cold. It read, "Keep acting like you are pregnant. She cannot know the truth yet." My husband was paying our house help to fake a pregnancy, and I had been sleeping beside him every night without a clue. If stories like this keep you up wondering what you do in my shoes, subscribe now, because what I uncovered after that message was something no woman should ever have to survive inside her own marriage. My name is Chamaka. I married Ikenna 4 years ago, in a wedding so beautiful that people in our estate still talk about the Asoebi colors we chose. We built a good life together in Enugu, him working as an engineer with a construction firm, me running a small boutique that was finally starting to turn a real profit. On paper, we were the couple everyone envied. Underneath, we were carrying a weight that only 2 people truly understood. The weight of 3 miscarriages in 4 years, each one taking a little more of the light out of both our eyes. After the 3rd loss, I stopped talking about children altogether. It hurt too much to hope. Ikenna, on the other hand, seemed to carry his own private grief differently. He grew quiet during family gatherings, especially when his mother, Mama Wakego, brought up the topic of grandchildren, which she did constantly, sometimes gently, sometimes with a sharpness that cut straight through me. A marriage without children is like a farm without rain, she liked to say, usually right after asking when I would finally do my duty. I endured her words because I loved Ikenna, and because he always stepped in to defend me when his mother pushed too hard. He would hold my hand under the table, squeeze it, and later apologize for her behavior. I trusted him completely. That trust is exactly why finding that message on his phone felt like the ground splitting open beneath me. Our house help, a quiet young woman named Neka, had been with us for almost a year. She cooked, cleaned, ran errands, and kept mostly to herself. I had no reason to suspect anything unusual about her until that night I picked up Ikenna's phone to check the time, and a notification lit up the screen. A message from Neka. Curiosity, or maybe some instinct I didn't fully understand yet, made me open it. The conversation stretched back nearly 2 months. Messages about the plan, about padding one underclothing, about avoiding certain family members at close range, about staying consistent with the story regardless of who asked questions. And then the message that broke something inside me completely. Keep acting like you are pregnant. She cannot know the truth yet. I sat on the edge of our bed for nearly an hour, phone in my lap, staring at my sleeping husband, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Was this an affair? Was Neka carrying his child, and this entire elaborate scheme was designed to slowly prepare me for the truth, easing me into accepting another woman's pregnancy before revealing it outright? My mind spiraled through every horrifying possibility, each one worse than the last. If your chest is tightening right now, the way mine did that night, imagine living through it in real time, not knowing which version of betrayal you are about to face. This is exactly why you need to subscribe before we go further, because what I discovered over the following days was far more complicated than a simple affair. I did not confront Ikenna immediately. I needed proof, clarity, something beyond a single message that could theoretically be misunderstood. So I did something I never imagined myself capable of. I began quietly investigating my own husband. I started paying closer attention to Nneka's movements around the house. I noticed things I had previously dismissed as ordinary, the way she sometimes wore looser clothing on certain days and tighter clothing on others, the way she avoided lifting heavy items in front of visiting relatives but carried them without hesitation when it was just the two of us in the house, the way she flinched slightly whenever Mama Nwake got called unexpectedly to announce a visit. One afternoon, while Nneka was out running errands, I searched her room, something I am not proud of, but desperation makes people do things they never thought they would. Tucked inside her drawer, I found a small notebook filled with handwritten notes, dates, and phrases like third month appearance, avoid standing too long near Mama, and confirm story with Ikenna before Sunday visit. My hands trembled as I read through pages of what looked like rehearsed lines, a script for a performance I was apparently not supposed to know about. That evening, I confronted Ikenna the moment he walked through the door, notebook in hand, voice shaking with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. I said, "Explain this to me," holding the notebook out to him. "Explain why our househelp has been rehearsing a pregnancy for months and why you told her to keep acting like she's pregnant so I wouldn't find out the truth." Ikenna's face went through a rapid transformation, shock, guilt, and something that looked almost like relief, as if a burden he had been carrying alone was finally about to be shared, whether he wanted it that way or not. "It is not what you think," he said quietly. "Then tell me what it actually is," I demanded, because right now every possibility in my head involves you betraying me in some way. He sat down heavily on the living room chair, rubbing his hands over his face before finally speaking. "My mother has been sick, Chiamaka, seriously sick. The doctors found something in her lungs 3 months ago. She has not told the extended family yet because you know how she is about appearing weak in front of people. But she told me, and she told me one thing clearly. She said her only wish, the only thing keeping her fighting, was to know that a grandchild was coming before she died." My anger did not disappear, but something inside me shifted, listening carefully now instead of simply reacting. "So you decided to lie to her using our househelp as a prop," she said. "He did not plan it that way originally," he said. "After the third miscarriage, we both agreed we needed time before trying again, remember? But my mother's health declined so quickly, and in a moment of desperation, when she asked me directly if we were expecting, I said yes. I don't know why I said it. It felt like the only thing that could give her something to hold on to in that moment." I stared at him stunned. "You told your dying mother I was pregnant without telling me first?" I panicked, he admitted, shame heavy in his voice. And then the lie needed maintaining. She started asking to see progress, wanting to feel a bump during visits, wanting updates on trimesters. I could not keep making excuses for why you looked the same every month, so I asked Nneka, who I trusted, to help maintain the appearance during family visits when you were sometimes away at the boutique or resting. I told myself it was temporary, that I would find the right moment to tell my mother the truth, or maybe somehow we would actually concede again before the lie became too large to sustain. This is the part of the story where you start realizing nothing is ever as simple as it first appears, which is exactly why this channel exists, to peel back these layers one at a time. If you're invested in seeing how deep this goes, make sure you're subscribed, because the true motive behind this entire scheme was about to become far more complicated than a son trying to comfort a dying mother. I sat with Ikenna's explanation for days, oscillating between sympathy for his impossible situation and anger at being excluded from a decision that directly involved my own body and my own grief. I decided to speak with Mama Nwakego myself, not to expose the lie cruelly, but to understand exactly how deep this deception had grown and why it had been allowed to continue for so long without anyone considering how it would eventually collapse. I visited her the following weekend alone without telling Ikenna. She welcomed me warmly, thinner than I remembered, her once commanding presence now softened by illness. We sat in her parlor, sipping zobo, making small talk before I finally found the courage to bring up the pregnancy she believed was real. "Mama," I said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She studied my face for a long moment, something knowing flickering behind her tired eyes. "You found out," she said simply, not as a question, but as a statement. My breath caught. "You knew it wasn't real?" Mama Nwakego let out a slow, weary sigh. "Chiamaka, I have lived far longer than you. I know the difference between a woman carrying life and a woman carrying fear. I suspected within the first month that something was staged, the way you moved, the way Nneka's stomach shape shifted unnaturally between visits, but I said nothing." "Why?" I asked, genuinely confused now. "If you knew, why continue accepting the lie?" Her answer changed everything I thought I understood about this entire situation. "Because there is something else at stake here, something my son does not fully know, and something I have kept hidden even from him." I leaned forward, my earlier anger replaced entirely by a sharpening curiosity. "What do you mean?" "Your father-in-law, before he passed, left a clause in the family property agreement. The ancestral compound, the one Ikenna grew up in, the one his siblings have been fighting quietly over for years, carries a condition. If Ikenna does not have a child, biological or otherwise recognized in the family line, within 5 years of your wedding anniversary, his portion of that property reverts entirely to his older brother Chibundu." My mind reeled. 5 years? Our wedding anniversary is 2 months. "Exactly," Mama Nwakego said. "Chibundu already has 3 children and has been growing increasingly impatient, hinting to the extended family lawyers that the deadline is approaching. If word spreads that you and Ikenna have no pregnancy in progress, Chibundu will move quickly to claim that portion of the property before the deadline even fully arrives, using legal technicalities to push the timeline forward." Suddenly, the fake pregnancy was not simply about comforting a dying woman's emotional wish. It was about protecting an inheritance, a home, a piece of family legacy that Ikenna and I had never even known was at risk until this very conversation. If you thought the story was simply about a husband's desperate lie to his mother, you now understand why nothing in this family has ever been what it appeared to be on the surface, and why staying subscribed matters, because the resolution to all of this was far from straightforward. I left Mama Nwakego's house that day, carrying a weight far heavier than the one I had arrived with. It was no longer simply about betrayal or deception between husband and wife. It had become a tangled web involving inheritance law, sibling rivalry, and a dying woman's desperate attempt to protect her son's future using whatever tools remained available to her, including her own silence about a lie she recognized from the very beginning. I confronted Ikenna again that evening, this time with the full picture in front of us both. "Your mother knew the pregnancy was staged from the start," I told him, "and she let it continue because your inheritance depends on proving a child is coming within the next 2 months. Ikenna's face drained of color. She never told me about that clause. "She said your father added it years ago. worried that if the marriage struggled without children, family pressure would eventually push you toward abandoning the union entirely, and he wanted to protect your place in the family regardless of what happened between us. But your brother has apparently been watching the calendar closely, waiting for any excuse to push you out at a financial loss. We sat in heavy silence for a long time that night, both of us realizing that every decision made up until this point, the lie, the notebook, Nneka's involvement, had all been individual reactions to a much larger family manipulation that neither of us had been told about directly. Mama Nwakego had allowed the deception to continue, not out of foolishness, but out of a calculated attempt to buy time while she quietly negotiated with the family lawyer to have the inheritance clause reviewed and potentially removed before her health declined further. The following week, we called a full family meeting, something that had not happened in Ngma 4 household in years without an argument erupting within the first 10 minutes. Chibundu arrived expecting to discuss the property transition, likely assuming the pregnancy rumors would collapse under scrutiny, giving him the legal opening he needed. Instead, Ikenna stood before the family and told the complete truth, every part of it, the miscarriages, the desperate lie, Nneka's reluctant involvement, and finally, the inheritance clause that had been quietly manipulating all of our decisions from the shadows. Chibundu's composure cracked almost immediately. "You knew about that clause?" he asked their mother, his voice sharp with accusation. "You let me believe it was simply a matter of time?" Mama Nwakego said, "I protected what I believed was fair for both my sons. Your father's condition was never meant to punish anyone. It was meant to encourage stability, not create a countdown for you to seize property the moment your brother's marriage faced hardship. I have already begun the process of having the clause revised with the family lawyer, removing the reproductive condition entirely, replacing it with equal division regardless of children, because no family legacy should ever be tied to a woman's body or a couple's private grief." The relief that spread through the room was almost tangible, though Chibundu's disappointment lingered visibly on his face. Nneka, who had remained silent throughout most of the meeting, finally spoke, her voice trembling but honest. "I only agreed to help because Ikenna paid for my brother's school fees in exchange," she admitted. "I did not fully understand the inheritance situation behind it. I thought I was simply helping comfort a sick woman. I am sorry for the part I played in deceiving you, Chiamata." I found surprisingly that I could not hold on to anger toward her. She had been a young woman caught inside a family's complicated survival strategy, offered help for her brother's education in exchange for a performance she did not fully understand the weight of. In the weeks that followed, Mama Nwakego's health continued its slow decline, but something had shifted in our family dynamic entirely. The property clause was formally revised, removing the pressure that had quietly poisoned so many decisions behind the scenes. Ikenna and I finally sat down, together and honestly, to discuss what our path forward actually looked like, choosing to pursue further fertility treatment on our own timeline, free from the shadow of inheritance deadlines or family expectations dictating our choices. Mama Nwakego passed away 4 months later, peacefully, in her sleep, having lived long enough to see the truth restore honesty within her family, rather than destroy it entirely. At her funeral, Chibundu embraced Ikenna for the first time in years without an argument trailing behind the gesture. I think about that night often, sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at a phone screen that revealed a lie I never expected to uncover. I learned that betrayal does not always mean what you first assume it means, and that sometimes the deepest deceptions in a family are built not out of malice, but out of desperation, fear, and love twisted into shapes that hurt the very people they were meant to protect. If this story taught you anything about how layered our families truly are, how the people closest to us sometimes carry burdens we never see until the truth forces its way into the light, then you understand exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe now, because every story we tell here reminds us that the truth, no matter how painful, always finds its way home eventually.